Yes, one Celtic legend wasn't enough on the channel, so we've signed up Scott McDonald for the new season on 67 Hail Hail. Scott, welcome to 67 Hail Hail. How are you?
I'm very well, Hamish. Hello to both of you, yourself and Dave. Thanks for having me.
He's already been shortened to Dave rather than David. That's a very Aussie thing to do.
I was just about to say that. I've not really been called Dave since my high school days, but
Really?
I'll take it. I'll take it.
It will be mate soon, just like Ange calls everyone at the moment. So don't worry. Give us time.
Right. People watching this, Scott, and we do have quite a large contingent of Aussie Celtic fans now, but in terms of the ones based over here, they'll be wanting to know what you've been up to over the last number of years since we last saw you in Scotland, and what are you up to right now?
Yeah, well, funny enough, I've still been playing. It just seems to have never ended. I did retire for that period before I left Scotland, and then I got the opportunity to come back to Australia to play in the A-League, and done a little bit of a tour around the east coast of Australia, mind you. I played for a team in Melbourne, Sydney and Queensland as well, and Brisbane. So it's been quite the journey for myself. And finally, I think we're probably setting roots down in the Gold Coast, which is in Queensland. Family are really, really settled and really enjoying the life here. And we'll just wait and see what's next for me. I'm still undecided on what that's going to be. I'm doing my UEFA Pro license with the Scottish FA at the moment. Doing a little bit of media work over here, particularly while the Euros was on, which was fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed that, and still keeping fit. So I'm just waiting to see whether or not I'm going to continue. And that's more on me than waiting on a phone call, particularly. So, but the time is on my side. So we'll just play it out and see what's next.
Don't take this the wrong way. What age are you? Because you seem to have been playing forever, Scott, and you're still playing.
Yeah, well, I'll be 38 this year in another month's time. Not even, actually. Give it a couple of weeks. So, I feel great. People probably have commented along the way that probably I look a lot fitter now than what I ever did in a Celtic jersey. I think as you get older with age, you tend to learn a lot more about your body and what you should be doing for it, and you mature and you grow up, and obviously the time in England as well was certainly an eye-opener for that also.
David, he still was playing, still scoring goals as well. I mean, he left that bit out. I think, was it 7 goals a couple of seasons ago in the Australian League? He's still firing goals in.
Yeah, it's what he was remembered for during his time in Scotland as well. He was one of my favourite Celtic strikers, probably one of my heroes growing up. The Martin O'Neill days, when I was just a wee bit before my time. I was sort of the Strachan era growing up, and Scott was the main man during that for me. So great to have him on. Really looking forward to seeing his insight in the team and the new manager over the coming weeks and months.
You'll slip that £20 over to David.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, too right.
We're going to chat about Ange at the end of this video. I think before that, we wanted to do what we did with Jackie McNamara last season. Jackie came on board this time last year, and we spoke about his career at Celtic. Now, to be fair, Jackie spent, I think, 10 or 11 years at Celtic. You were slightly less than that. I couldn't believe it was only, 2.5 years?
Yeah, well, I was going to say that, just on, about 2.5, almost 3. But there was quite a lot that happened in that period of time, that's for sure. There was a lot of highs and a lot of lows throughout that.
We'll start then with you coming to the club, signed for Celtic in 2007 for approximately 700,000. Looks a bit of a bargain nowadays. You're probably asked this all the time, Scott, so forgive me, honestly. Did you find it difficult coming to Celtic after what had happened at the end of the 04-05 season?
No, not at all. I think it probably came as a surprise as much to me as probably what it did to probably the supporters that Celtic were, in for me at the time. Obviously, it was documented at the time that Rangers were interested also and had a bid in the January window knocked back from Motherwell and Celtic. Oddly, it was a weird one because the actual deal was agreed in the March time, which is really unusual for a transfer to actually get agreed and dealt with, there and then. I actually went to Celtic Park in the middle of March to sign the agreement. Bit of confusion of what might happen if I got injured, mind you, if the deal would go through or whatnot. So But look, as a young player, you just get on with things, and I love my time at Motherwell, and I was just super excited. It didn't really affect me in terms of the things that had gone on previous to obviously signing for Celtic. If anything, that probably spurred me on more to actually go and prove people that I could obviously, one, play at that level, but two, turn it around and do a job for Celtic and get everyone on my side. I didn't need much motivation. Let's put it that way. When I turned up at the club, I knew what I had to do, and I knew all eyes were going to be on me if I was going to play. And I was already behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So, but thankfully, it worked out really well, and things started really, really well, really quickly for me at the football club.
Yeah. I mean, you made your debut against Spartak Moscow. You set up a brilliant Paul Hartley goal with a cross. You had to wait until the home leg of that tie to score your first goal. I seem to remember at the time there was a lot of chat about when is Scott McDonald going to score his first Celtic goal. Was that going on in your mind ahead of finally netting?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the build-up before that, because when I signed for the club, I actually got sent off in my last game for Motherwell the previous year. So going into the new season, I was, I missed the first 2 games for Celtic in the league. So that really put me behind everyone else, and even more pressure. And Kenny Miller was toing and froing at the time whether or not he was going to stay at the club. We had Magic Zorowski, we had Big Jan Venegor Hesseling, we signed Chris Killam as well. So we had a lot of quality strikers there at the time. I managed to have a great pre-season. We went to Switzerland and the USA, and from that time, I got the trust of Gordon and the staff pretty early on, and I can still remember it being in Switzerland probably a week in, and Tommy Burns, approaching me and coming to me and reassuring me that I belonged at the football club. To go back to what we talked about previously there about the pressure, or me coming to the club, and a few supporters probably not being that happy about it at the time. There's nothing more than the great man coming to you a week to 10 days into your Celtic career and telling you that you belong there. You can imagine I'm only about 5'5", but I felt probably about 7'5" at the time. So it just spurred me on and gave me the confidence from there on in. And my first game was, I think, away to Aberdeen. That was my first start. I think it was second, third game. And I remember missing a chance in the first half there, a glance and header. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's my chance gone. And then I think it was about 65 minutes, got the hook, Kenny Miller come on, bang, bang, scored a brace. So I'm sitting there going, there's my chance gone. I'm going to have to wait a few more weeks now. Kenny's probably come back, and that's him, ready to settle in. But we went into, the tie against Spartak Moscow on the Wednesday, and bang, I was straight in again. And I think that particularly probably that was because Kenny was looking to get on the move, didn't want to be Champions League tied or European tied at the time. There was a lot of talk because he was doing well for the national team as well, that he could get a move to Italy or thereabouts. And that pretty much paved the way for me to sort of, stamp my sort of self within the Celtic 11, and like you said, set up the goal at Spartak, and that gave me huge confidence after that game as well. You felt a part of it finally because you were contributing, albeit it wasn't a goal, and you were still waiting for that one. And sure enough, when that first one came, it was so special because my mum and dad and my brothers were all at the game as well. They had come over from Australia, obviously, to watch me at the start of my Celtic career, and it's been documented as well. And without question, I grew up as a Celtic fan and a Celtic supporter, and went through some pretty crappy times as a young kid, actually, going through the 9-in-a-row spell for Rangers. And quite a few of my pals are Rangers fans over here, so used to get it in the neck. But it was a fantastic moment for me and the family. And yeah, from there, it just spiraled, and the confidence grew. And every time I went out on the football pitch for Celtic, I believed I was going to score.
How important, Scott, do you think that goal was against Moscow for the support to sort of take to you at the time? Because obviously you scored so many goals for Motherwell, but a lot of the support remembered you for 2. And obviously when you came to Celtic, when you came to Celtic, that's effectively what you were known for. But all of a sudden you scored that goal against Moscow. You were known as one of the key reasons we've qualified for the Champions League, and you're a hero at that point. Did you feel that way, or did you still feel at that point, I've got so much to prove here to these supporters? Or did you feel that goal against Moscow brought a lot of people inside?
I think it was a bit of both. I think it vindicated me being there. I'd arrived, type of thing, playing at an elite level as well against Champions League opposition. That wasn't just a domestic game where you scored your first goal. You scored in a Champions League qualifier where you qualify for the Champions League. So I think for that, my confidence just went through the through the roof, and I believed, I should be there. I never doubted that from the start. I think couple of journalists questioned me when I signed the pre-contract and that, and I sort of laughed at them and went, well, if I'm scoring goals at Motherwell, how can I not score goals at Celtic? I'm playing with better players. We're dominating the ball. We're going to be playing at Celtic Park in front of 60,000 week to week. You're going to get chance after chance. Up to you. It sounds easy, but as we've seen over the history, it's not as easy as what that sounds. So you've got to find a way. And I actually found that simplifying my game was the reason of success. I didn't have to work as hard or do as much with the ball as probably what I had to do at Motherwell, and I knew the quality of players that were around me. So when I got it, keep it simple, get it to Aiden, get it to Naka, play off Jan, Paul Hart, Scott Brown. There was so many. So it was just do the simple things right, tighten that up, work hard off the ball, and just get in the danger areas. And sure enough, particularly in the first season anyway, that was what I sort of, built my game around. Second year was a little bit more. I started to develop a little bit more and control the game a little bit more and take the ball in and bring others into the game. But the first season was all about numbers.
Yeah. We spoke about you slipping David 20 quid earlier. I bet you slipped the Spartak Moscow defender the same for that goal, because that was a howler, but you took advantage of it. 31 goals in all competitions in your first season, 25 of them in the league. I think Big Jan wired in with 50. Yeah. Oh, wow.
There we go. Yeah, the story behind that, actually, that was actually one of my neighbours who actually done that for me. Really special. At the end of that season, just come knocking on my door, and he actually noticed it in another interview I did, another podcast, and he reached out on Twitter, which was really nice. Actually, after all these years, going, I can't believe you still got my jersey. But no, it was really special for me to have a supporter, give me that, and I take good pride in it. So I'm still there.
Fantastic. Tell us about Big Jan then, because you two were, for me, maybe other than Gary Hooper and Anthony Stokes, the last real partnership Celtic had, little and large. You guys were great together.
It was fantastic. I can't really put my finger on how the relationship just built. I think Gordon Strachan has to really take a lot of credit for it, because we had some quality strikers there at the time as well. Like I said, Magic was there or thereabouts as well. Scored a lot of goals the year before. Kenny, decided to leave, so that put me in pole position. And from there, we just built this little and large, like you said, partnership. And the way Gordon was able to work on things on the training ground, and first man, second man, long, first man, short, play around the corner, come around the face when it came into Jan. Still things now that I try and teach a lot of young centre forwards, and the game's changed now. We only play with 1 9 rather than 2 9s, but you can still play with your 10 off that, and it was really enjoyable. The amount that I learned in that period and how to play off a big centre forward, which I was already doing at Motherwell as well. To be honest, with the likes of Jim Hamilton, who we had a great relationship and great partnership, and Jan was just even another level above that. And I think we scored something like 50 plus goals that season. So it was a fantastic year for both of us.
Obviously, in January that year, 2008, we brought in Sammy. I think he was on loan at the time. Obviously, Gordon felt we needed just a bit more firepower up front. What did you think that Samaras added to the team, added to what you and Jan were providing? And how did you and Jan react at the time to getting another forward in when you were still scoring so many goals?
I don't think I particularly liked it. But it was, that's just being honest. You never like someone coming on your patch, but it was great. It spurred you on more, and that was the reason why he was brought in. And actually, Sammy was completely different to what myself and Jan were. If you're probably being honest, and we've seen it in the later years in Georgios's, career at Celtic, playing that lone striker role, he was formidable. That he was excellent at playing that. Playing in a partnership at times, it was new to him. I don't think he had played it too much in Holland prior to that. And, when he was at Manchester City before he'd signed for us, I don't think they played two up front too much. So it took him time as well. But, Georgios, took pressure off, in different ways and was excellent. And some of the things he could do as well was wow. And he certainly made a name for himself very early on when he came on at Rugby Park. I remember that well, coming on and scoring that goal when the ball went down the byline.
The orange boots.
Yeah, everyone said about the orange boots as well, didn't they? The mercurials that he had cut inside off from the right-hand side and nicely curled one into the far corner. But, yeah, I think it was important that we had someone else to take the weight off at times, particularly the second season when injuries started to occur. And unfortunately, I think Jan and Sammy had a couple of, not overly serious ones, but long enough to take them out for periods at a time. And that made it difficult to create that partnership that I had in the first year prior with Jan, to build on that with either Sammy or Jan. It was either one or the other jumping in, jumping out, which was probably difficult and didn't allow them to get the goals that probably would have helped us as well, take the pressure off a little bit, more on me. Not that I felt it at the time, because you just expected to go on the pitch and score goals. But the thing about the two boys that I loved the most, and probably I was the most, how can I put it, all about the numbers, wanting to get the numbers. I think obviously Jan did, but he was far more experienced than me, the levels that he played at as well. And he was such a great team player. He really was. He taught me a lot from that, and so was Sammy. And it was great to play with them and learn that as well. Particularly, I was still 25, but I was probably a young 25 in terms of the experience that I'd played, prior to playing at Celtic, and I was still growing at the time. And probably at the time I'd left Celtic, I'd matured a lot in my intelligence within the game, and just as a footballer, I was a lot better by the time I'd finished my career at Celtic.
Right, season 2007-08, the run-in, we're probably going to do a video dedicated to that itself, Scott, because I guess there's so much to chat about. Just tell us briefly, if you can, about what that was like, clawing that deficit back to win the league.
Well, I can tell you all about before we went on the run, because I remember we played Motherwell at home.
I was going to bring that up. I remember you getting subbed.
Motherwell down to 10 men. We're losing 1-0, and as some fans say, I had a huff, so I wasn't happy with getting taken off at 1-0. And I remember the next day the PFA awards were getting announced, and there was the four of us, and I think that was two from each side. And I had to go and apologise publicly for sort of causing a little bit of controversy, for Gordon at the time, because we lost the game 1-0, and that put us, I think it was like 8 points or whatever behind Rangers. And the league seemed over, and I probably added a lot more pressure than what was needed on the manager at the time. So it was important that I took responsibility, and which I did, and everything was forgiven quickly, and we moved on very quickly. But I remember we had an international break as well, and I actually took a little trip to Rome. And stopped by the Vatican on the way with the wife, the then fiance at the time, just to get away and freshen up and try and be ready for the running, because a lot of pressure first year there as well, and expectancies and wanting to win the title and putting pressure on me. I mean, every time we lost a game, I don't think I talked to my partner. When I come home, I shut the door, and that was me till I went to training probably 2 days later, if we played on a Saturday. So going to Rome was nice, and I did go to the Vatican and say a little prayer and everything, and I still reckon that had something to do with it, going into the running. But after that, we had such a hard run-in as well. I think we had to play, obviously, Hibs twice, Motherwell twice. I think Motherwell was twice away as well, and we had to play Rangers twice. So it was a really crazy run-in. And as the games went on, obviously the belief started to grow that we could actually do something. And obviously Rangers had their other games and was doing well in the Europa League at the time. But we just felt we were onto something special. By the time probably there was 4 games left, and there's no question the 2 Rangers games were the most crucial ones. We had to beat them if we stood any chance of winning the title, and which we did, as we know.
Just touching on that period between maybe January and March, Scott, that obviously wasn't too great for the club. We were slipping up, felt nearly every second week or so. We were falling further behind. We're talking about being subbed. I think you were subbed a few weekends in a row. I think that was maybe getting to you at the time. Did you sense any, or was there a lot of tension in the dressing room at that point in terms of certain relationships between the players? I mean, what was causing the initial slump just before the run-in?
I don't know. I think probably just confidence. There was never any sort of confrontation within the players themselves. We had a great group. It was so enjoyable, the group itself, and it was very harmonious within. And you've got to say that was down to the staff themselves. Gary Pendry was fantastic, total opposite to Gordon Strachan. And obviously we had Tommy, but we had the disruption of obviously what was going on with Tommy at the time. And obviously Neil had come in and re-galvanized that a little bit. So I think it was more just we were creating chances, but we weren't taking them. And I think probably that was particularly why as well. I was probably having a dip in form at that point, not scoring as many goals as I was prior, before the new year. And it was trying to sort of find a way. And with Samaras there now, we had another option. So that was giving Gordon a different option. And probably, I can't really remember, but I probably didn't like it at the time, getting subbed when teams are getting tired at the end of games and that's your opportunity to score goals. But we had quality on the bench that was going to be there and trying to change the game. But I think a lot of the credit has to go to, the players, but more the manager for being able to keep a calmness. I remember him coming in on a few occasions when you always remember that, coming in on a Monday morning, it was crisis time. If you had lost a game and dropped 3 points and Rangers had gone ahead of you, it was very tit for tat at the time in my career with Rangers. You win, they win. You lose, they win, pick up points, or they would play and drop points. Right, we have to pick up points. It was fantastic. It was great. Obviously, looking back and playing in those pressures. But if you'd lost, then the whole world was coming crumbling down, and the media was onto you. But Gordon had a way of being able to come in, put all that to the side from himself, and look after the players first, and enlighten the mood on a Monday morning. And whatever the crisis was, he was always able to do that. And we pushed on and we moved forward even through the darker periods.
Yeah, I mean, you speak about darker periods there. It didn't really get any darker than the sad passing of Tommy Burns, obviously, in that period of time. And, that was the lowest of the low. And equally, there was the highest of the high in terms of winning the league for Tommy. Is there one moment, be it good or bad, that sticks out to you from those 6 months that you keep going back to and you keep remembering?
Prior to that, I remember the first Old Firm game of the season, that we got well and truly beaten in. Sorry, there's a mosquito here, guys. Sorry. We got beat, 3-0 at Ibrox. Barry Ferguson scored. I think Charlie Adams scored off the top of my head, and it was very rare. But obviously, Gordon was very upset. Said his piece. I think Pendo might have said one or two things, and then turned to Tommy and sort of said, "Have you got anything to say?" And usually Tommy would just go, "Nope," right? But for the one time, he let loose. He let loose and told every single one of us that how much we had let everyone down. Not just in the stands, but all the Celtic supporters and what it is to wear a Celtic jersey and what it means to him and what it means to the fans. It really went through the lot of us, but it really sunk in. It was one of those moments where, when someone speaks, you just go, whoa, it's like a sledgehammer hitting you. And that was particular, one of the key moments in my Celtic career where I was like, wow, the man's spoken. So, and he was very, very rare he would do that, obviously not being the manager. But you could tell how annoyed he was on that day. If we're talking about within the run-in itself, there was so many highs and lows, guys. It's hard to really put your finger on it. That was a roller coaster. A favorite goal within that period, I'd probably have to say, look, there's no question. I wouldn't even say my own. It would be, Jan's goal to make it 2-1 after missing the penalty in that game, because with everything that was lying on that result, and me missing the penalty, and previous history of no matter how many goals I'd scored up to that period, if we hadn't won that game, there was only one guy that was going to get it in the neck, and it was probably me. So I was very delighted that I could sort of get my neck up high enough and get my head on something for Jan to pop it in the net, and we moved forward from there. And I think probably the other one was probably when we went 1-0 down at Fir Park. I think it was Porter that might have scored, and it was Porter, and we went right down the park, Nakamura got it. I think Hartley spread it out wide, put it in the box, bang! I was managed to equalise within seconds. And when you do things like that, it makes a statement. That we're not going to get beat today. And it's always a hard place to go, as we know, Fir Park. And they beat us prior. The game before that, Mark McGee had done well against us. But to score that equaliser straight away, it was just like, right, we're going to win this game now. And that was key. And just turning points like that through the run-in were massive. You start. I remember the game was a 12:30 kickoff on a Saturday. That game, and I just remember driving away, going, "We're going to win this." After that game at Fir Park, particularly because we were just on that run and we were looking formidable.
So obviously talk about the future season, second season under Gordon Strachan. Do you feel you developed your game then into something that you felt was a bit more than a goal scorer?
Yeah, I did. I felt my all-round game was starting to come a lot more together. I'd established myself at the club. The things that Gordon was asking of me as well, I certainly was taking that on board. I probably, looking back, I didn't come back in the best shape, that's for sure, within the second season. There was a lot of profiling on that, particularly at the start of the season, which I wasn't happy about because I was still performing. But there was probably rightful reason for it. And, again, that's about education and understanding your body and what you can and can't do. Probably took the foot off the gas a little bit and celebrated too much, guys. But we soon got to grips with that. Funny story, actually, with that. I remember they weren't happy with my fitness at the time. So I was out doing extra running. And it was up at Lennoxtown, on one of the main pitches there. And the physios took me out in the afternoon, ready to do 4-4-minute runs. And I'm laughing because there's wee Gordon. What are you doing? We're going to do some 4-4-minute runs. Good, I'll join in. I was like, you've got to be kidding me on, right? He's going to join in. I'll go that way and you go that way. See if you can beat me. Right, and I'm just like, and you could see like he was burning it. He was absolutely burning it, and he was like, we'd meet the halfway point, and he was meeting me there, and I'm just going, oh my god, he's actually going to beat me here, and he's trying to embarrass me, like, which he was. He was trying to put it on me. He was trying to lay it on me. Thankfully, by the second one, he disappeared, so I managed to get rid of him. But he could still run. Then he was still fit, even though he had a dodgy hip. But that was him playing mind games. He deliberately done that. Because he was like, you need to get a little bit more Nick. Come on, sort yourself out. And he was good with things like that. But that was quite funny looking back, because you think about how many managers would come out and do that and put you under that type of pressure and trying to make you look silly. But no, I mean, again, that just come to mind. But there's so many good memories throughout that period. And even that season, there was a lot of good memories for me. Some of the goals I scored in that second season.
Yeah, we're going to have the big chat about our favourite Scott McDonald goals right at the end of the video. I want to ask you about Nakamura, because I absolutely love Nakamura. I mean, who wouldn't love Nakamura? But what was it like to play with him? What was your relationship like with Naka?
Do you know what? I loved him. He was the true professional. worked so hard. A lot of people didn't realise how hard he was on himself. You know, if he made one mistake, you know, he used to get down on himself and get frustrated. You never really seen that side of him because he always looked sort of straight faced. But you knew when he come in off the park that, you know, if something was bothering him, you could tell. And I had a really good relationship with him because obviously I played for Australia, he played for Japan. So I used to try and have a little bit of banter with him. And look, Naka could speak English. He could speak it fine. He just wasn't confident. But on a one-to-one basis, on a training ground, if I was speaking to him, particularly because I wasn't Scottish as well, so I had a clearer accent, he was, you know, he was more or less, you know, speaking with me. So we built a decent relationship up through that. And obviously he always had his translator there, Makoto as well, who used to stand in the goal every single day. He used to do extra every day, as everyone knows, and hit his free kicks. And I remember like the guy trying to put like a top bins so Naka could hit it in there. But it was phenomenal. And then he'd come in, it would be -3 outside, and he'd sit in the tin ice bath, you know, up to his neck, and just get the motor on and start just sitting there for 10 minutes. And just people are going, how can he do that? Like, seriously. You know, he'd be out there banging them in, you know, for an extra hour and a half. I think sometimes the physio probably had to come and tell the translator, right, tell him that's enough now. He's done enough. You know, and he was just phenomenal. Even in training, you gave him a free kick. And like Gordon tried to do something once to unsettle him and just went, put a man on the edge of the wall there and the edge of the wall. Sorry, I'm trying to get the camera. And nothing in between. So you'd have a man there and a man there, right? And he just went like that, right, top corner. Right, try it again, top corner. Go, right, everyone, let's go. We're finished. We're not doing that again. You know, so he was unreal. Like, it was like a penalty kick for him. You know, he was that good at them. You were that confident. If you were to buy a foul outside the box somewhere, which I've done on a couple of occasions, he was going to ping it in. You know, when he saved us on a few occasions, I think I remember one at St. Mirren away, particularly last minute. I think he scored. He scored a couple of crackers, obviously, at Rugby Park, as we know, and yeah, he was just special. Even the Champions League nights, as we've seen against Manchester United, he scored a phenomenal one. But yeah, he was probably he still goes down as the best player I've played with. You know, and you know, it's hard sometimes because people ask me about Aiden, and Aiden certainly was phenomenal as well. You know, in a different type of way.
Did you get on with Aiden?
We were very good friends, actually. We lived literally 200 yards apart from each other, so we used to travel in a lot together. We were the young crew. There was myself, him, and Darren O'Dea, who just, you know, lived a couple of miles down the road as well. So we all used to, you know, jump. Once we moved to Lennoxtown, we all used to jump in together and have banter. And yeah, sometimes I would go out on a night out with them, but obviously, like you said earlier about everyone fighting at Ibrox, and I managed to find the backdoor route. That was always me.
Brilliant. Right, so Naka leaves after your second season. You leave, 6 months or so later. I remember your final goal against Rangers. I think you left a couple of days after that. Disappointed to leave that way? Did you feel you still had a lot to give at Celtic?
Yeah, I think... Yeah, looking back, absolutely. You know, it was sad and disappointing that I had to leave. I just felt, obviously, with Gordon and having such a strong relationship with Gordon and how he built me into the player that I was at Celtic and having a manager at the time, you know, with Tony, I wasn't really getting on too well with and just didn't feel the love or the confidence from him. And I'd had that from my previous manager, and it just wasn't working. And we'd brought in Marco Fortune as well. And I just felt if there was any way possible that I was not to play well, then I wasn't going to play at all. You know, I was going to be stuck on the bench, as in the Old Firm game. I was on the bench at the beginning of that game. So from that, I just didn't feel I had the buy-in from the manager. And obviously I had all the love from Gordon. And if Gordon hadn't been at Middlesbrough, I wouldn't have went to Middlesbrough. There's no question. You know, the lure of him being there and what he had talked about, trying to get the club promoted and how it had all the parachute money, and we were going to you obviously signed some decent players. It brought confidence to me that we could, go all the way to the Premier League. Obviously, that didn't turn out the way it probably should have for us, which was unfortunate. But you can never obviously have that crystal ball and look too far into the future at the time. But I just remember at the time, obviously asking, Celtic to do a little bit more for me, to show me a little bit more love in terms of wanting to keep me. And it never came. So when that didn't come from a board level, because they'd felt they'd probably reached the maximum they could do, and I was feeling, well, there's still room for that, as we know there's other players that are on a level, and they knew what the offer was that was coming to me was a hell of a lot more significant than what I was getting at Celtic. It was hard to turn down from that perspective. For me, a young guy, sort of, going into the middle of my career and had a baby on the way. So I was just starting a family. So I was starting to think about, well, I've got to look after myself and what's, after football. And that sort of took priority. And I just remember sitting at in Middlesbrough after I'd signed, and I just remember reality really hitting me that obviously I moved on very quickly, and Robbie Keane was signed like that. Just as a replacement. Obviously they needed someone to come in, a big name, because let's be real, I'd scored a lot of goals, and a lot of fans weren't happy that I'd left. So they basically spunked the whole £3.5 million quid in a one-er for 6 months. And it was some signing, I must say, but it certainly it made me hit 6 foot under that. Well, that's it. I'm finished. I'm done. It's quickly forgotten, aren't you? So it took me a while to get over that. I must say it probably took me 12 months to really get over not being at Celtic and actually have to watch them again and support them properly, particularly when an Old Firm game come along, and you just missed that pressure. You missed trying to win things, and I knew that had gone, and the focus had to be somewhere else. But it was very difficult, and for a lot of players, it's the best time of their lives when they're at Celtic.
The Tony Mowbray, Scott McDonald relationship always kind of confused me at the time. I just couldn't understand why your game time was reduced. I always felt that Tony would have some sort of put down almost when he was forced to praise you in the media and things like that. And you left at a strange time as well. You'd nearly bailed the team out on a couple of occasions against Falkirk. I remember your double there. Then obviously the goal against Rangers. And what was the reason? Did Tony talk to you about why he let you go, and what was the logical reason for doing that?
The relationship was never built properly, even when we were down at Middlesbrough. For a very long time, it was very difficult. It just didn't get the buy-in. When a manager just doesn't buy into you, you get the vibe. And there was a couple of conversations that we had, one-to-one, which I'm not really going to get into. There was no argument, but it was just very odd. The conversations were very odd, and it was very negative. The conversation coming from the other end, looking at it and going, right, I've been here 2.5 years or 2 years, and there's no positives. It's just all negatives about my game. And I was like, well, okay, this is where we are. Just get a head down and we'll keep going and keep. There was no telling me. I believed in what I was, and my numbers spoke for themselves. So I was going to continue doing what I needed to do. He was my next door neighbour when I was down at Middlesbrough. So kids were coming in and out, and look, there in the end there was, you grow up and there was a mutual respect there, and again, it didn't really finish nicely at Middlesbrough because of the way everything was. But I think Tony would admit that, I'd like to think he would, that from first meeting me and first having me as a footballer, that his opinion on me as one and how good I was changed a hell of a lot from the end. He might not say the same about my character, but that's fine. That's me, and that was him. He's his character, and we just had that that lack of sort of understanding, I would probably say. But hopefully at one point in time, our paths will cross again. I'd love to discuss and chat with people that I've had previous relationships with. Now that you're a mature man and a lot wiser, and you're not in that career where you've just got the blinkers on. It's nice to talk football to prior people and learn as well, because you want to go into management. You might be on that other side of the table where he was, and seeing it a lot differently to what you were as a player.
Yeah, so that's not the slightly less enjoyable times of your Celtic career, Scott, but let's chat about the brilliant ones. David, favourite McDonald goal, favourite kind of underrated McDonald goal? Have you got one of each?
Right, aye, well, got to be the Ibrox one, 1-0. That was brilliant. A goal befitting of what it gave Celtic at the time. I think we went 7 points clear after that one. Obviously, we didn't manage to win in the end, but the day itself was brilliant. I remember the build-up. I remember a lot of sort of pro Rangers coverage about how they were feeling good about themselves and going to get the result. Especially after the first game, we lost 4-2 at Parkhead. So it was a massive goal, and it was superbly taken. I just remember when that goal goes in, you just had this feeling we're not going to lose today. We're not even going to draw today. This is going to be our day. It was an incredible goal. So that's certainly my favourite one. I think probably most, if not all, Celtic fans would feel the same. Underrated one. I'm going to go for the one against Gretna, just to maybe be a bit controversial. That would have been a shocker result if we'd have drawn 1-1 against Gretna. And I remember at the time, it was a few days after Milan, I think. So he just scored the last minute winner against Milan.
Yeah.
A few days later, different sort of scenery. It was against Gretna, but it was a massive goal at the time. I think it put us top of the league going into a game against Rangers. I'm going to go with that one, because I remember the relief that came over me at the time it went in. I could not have been bothered with the media coverage if we'd have drawn 1-1 to Gretna. So that for me was a massive goal at the time. And you look at how we won the league. It was a massive goal in terms of league title.
We were awful that day, David. That Gretna game particularly, it was a stinking game. I just remember it was like Chris Killen scored the equaliser, and then again you talked about the Spartak Moscow player having one for me to score that. I think it was Kevin McNaughton actually who played me on, believe it or not, because Kevin played with me at Middlesbrough, and his head was in his hands before you even. And he talked, And he talked about that day when he came on loan from Tottenham at the time to Middlesbrough. We had a little chuckle about that as well. So and then obviously being again the Milan one, right place, right time. So I must have been doing something right.
to be fair, was that not a time in Motherwell's ground? Because Gretna were playing at Fir Park. Motherwell's ground was a bit all over the place. Yeah, it was. It was. Not compared to now, it's an absolute carpet. It's fantastic. That's my two anyway. Hamish, what's yours?
Yeah, right. There's so many to choose from, Scott. You did well in your time at the club. There's so many against Rangers as well. There's the 3-2 game, your two goals in that. I missed the second one. I only saw one McDonald goal that day because I went for a pie just before half time and missed your second one against Rangers. So I love that first one, the timing of the run, the header from Jan. That was that typical, interplay between the two of you, kind of summed up. What else do I love, in terms of an underrated goal, I love the one at Rugby Park, the 2-1 game, I think in your second season, when you kind of late on in the game, you get the ball wearing the yellow kit and you beat a couple of men, faint inside and then kind of outside of the foot it into the corner. I remember that being a huge goal, a really good goal as well. I'm not saying you didn't score good goals at all, because you clearly did, but that was a really good goal.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said earlier on in the interview, where I became a far better player, a much more complete player. And I started to do more things with the ball, without the ball in my second season. And probably the goals I scored in the second season, there was a lot more special ones than probably the first season. Just getting in the right areas and being there at the right time. I think the second season there was a few more special ones. That Kilmarnock one goes down as one of my favourites of all time. with 10 minutes to go, and you leave the goalie on his backside, and you're just there to tap it in an empty net. But I think for me, probably the most underrated goal Ibrox is my favourite, but probably the best ever goal I scored was the goal against Manchester United.
That's what I was going to say. That was going to be my favourite.
And Foster said last week that he should have saved it. I'm not sure he should have saved it. I don't think he's seen it coming. But it was a special goal against obviously the team that went on to be European champions that year as well. So it was probably the best goal I scored in my career.
We were only 6 minutes or so, weren't we? If we won in that one as well at the time. That was a gutter of a game, that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. Great time, Scott. Brilliant to chat. This was meant to be a half an hour video, and here we are 49 minutes in, still chatting. So we had hoped to chat.
Well, I can talk, don't worry. You get your money's worth.
I know. We had hoped to chat a wee bit about Ange, but we'll maybe leave that till next week. Scott's going to be with us this season, hopefully, unless me or David pissed him off big time in this video. We'll wait and see how that goes.
We're all good.
If you want to be part of the channel this season and see Scott coming on, just subscribe. Click the subscribe button. We are motoring with subs, and we've got Scott aboard, we've got Jackie aboard. We're going to be hearing from Kyogo Furuhashi later today, and there's so much happening. Scott, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, guys. Hail, hail, and we'll see you next week.